for the City of Ottawa. The Committee of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial tribunal appointed by City Council to make decisions on certain types of applications under the Planning Act. My name is Anne Tremblay, and I will be chairing the hearing this evening. With me are my fellow panel members, Mr. Scott Hindle, Mr. Colin White, and Ms. Kathleen Willis. Please take note that this video conference is being live streamed on YouTube and will be archived along with tonight's agenda on the city's website. Before I begin, I have a few comments that I'd like to outline, or issues that I need to raise just to bring to your information. While the issues surrounding development in the city are broad, the mandate that the committee has is actually quite limited. The committee cannot consider aspects of the proposal that are not related to the variances. For example, building height, if it's not a requirement under the minor variance application, we can't discuss building height because it complies with the zoning bylaw. We can't discuss noise, pollution, property maintenance, or property values. Also, we wouldn't be discussing anything relating to prosecution for illegal construction. We will not entertain personal comments about neighbors, agents, or applicants. And finally, if there's a reason to either add a variance during the course of discussion or to increase the amount of relief required of a minor variance that was in fact part of the notice but insufficient, in those cases, we will need to adjourn the application, and recirculate the proposal to include what those increased requirements or new condition would be. So as part of the statutory public notification requirements, each applicant is required to post a sign on their property and to file a statutory declaration confirming the sign posting. That declaration must be on our file today before we can hear your application. We have no statutory declarations in hand this evening, so we will need to proceed on an application per application basis with an oath or solemn declaration of the sign posting. So we will get to that piece as we move along. With respect to quorum, we have quorum. It's established this evening already. If we lose it due to technical difficulties, then we'll pause the proceedings to give the opportunity for the panel member to rejoin the meeting, because it does happen on occasion. However, failing the ability to reinstate quorum during the hearing, then what we would need to do is, in fact, to simply adjourn the item to the next meeting of the committee, and in this case would be June 17th. So in terms of the hearing process, there's an agenda on the committee's webpage. In fact, I think we're seeing the coordinate. Thank you. There is our agenda for the evening. For the sake of efficiency, the committee may choose to hear the applications in a different order. And in fact, I think we will be doing that this evening. The committee may ask for a brief presentation by the applicant, followed by questions by the members for clarification. And after that, once all the members have had a chance to ask their questions of the applicant or staff for clarification, the public submissions portion of the hearing will then be opened, and we will allow the opportunity for any interested parties to make their submission to the committee. Panel members might then follow up with questions to those speakers if clarification is required. When you are called upon to provide your comments, we're going to ask you to do the following. We'll ask you to start with your name, and we may ask you to spell it, and your municipal address for the record. Then we'll ask you to begin your submission by addressing your comments to the panel members. And you may ask questions, but they need to be through me, the chair. Then we'll also ask you to limit your comments to 5 minutes, and any exception to that rule is at the chair's discretion. Once all interested parties have had an opportunity to address the panel, the public submissions portion of the hearing will then be closed. And then after that, the committee will make a decision. So the committee can make an oral decision either to grant or deny the application. The committee may, by exception, choose to reserve its decision and in such a case, the panel will deliberate further on the evidence presented immediately following adjournment of the hearing, and then render a decision before the close of the committee's business this evening. So a formal written decision complete with the reasons for the decision will be issued within 10 days of the hearing. All the decisions of the committee are subject to a 20-day appeal period, during which the decision can be appealed to the local planning appeal tribunal for a fee. So we're ready to start. I'm going to ask if the members have any declaration of conflict of interest to raise. Anyone? Seeing none, we'll proceed. We have no minutes to approve this evening. And now we'll move to the adjournment requests, which we do have one. My understanding is we have an adjournment request for 5,000 Roger Ferrand Street. And the request for adjournment is for sine die. Do we have a speaker at all to this issue, Madam Coordinator? Yes, so Ms. McQuaig, you have the floor to speak to the request for adjournment.
Oh, there we go. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. I have submitted the revised plans as well as the application recirculation fee about a week and a half ago. So I was hoping, instead of a sine die adjournment, that we could be adjourned to not the next hearing, but the one after, which would provide enough time for circulation and sign posting.
All right, so Madam or Mr. Secretary Treasurer, have you got a date for us in terms of when that item might be brought forward? Be looking at July, I believe.
Correct. And we're fine with either whichever date in July the Committee of Adjustment would be comfortable with.
All right, so do we have a date from staff?
Madam Chair, I'll ask the Deputy Secretary Treasurer to confirm, but I believe July 22 might be the possible date here.
That is correct. July 22 is what we're aiming for recirculation of this application.
All right, any questions from the panel? No questions? Is there anyone who's tuned in from the public that would like to speak either for or against this request for an adjournment? All right, seeing none. Committee, have we got an approval on the agenda for an adjournment to July 22nd? Can I see hands, please? Thank you. So Ms. McQuaig, the application is adjourned to the July 22nd date. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so next we're going to go to our applications. And I think we're going to fast track a few. So I'd like to start with application number 4, which is 1944 Lanester Avenue. Madam Coordinator or whomever, do we have someone or I guess we don't have anybody on deck to speak to this, right? At this particular point in time? All right.
We do have the agent.
We have the agent? Okay, so just to let the agent know, what I think we'll do in this case is we'll simply ask the panel members to ask any questions that they may have for clarification, either from you or from staff, and then we can move forward with the application. Hello, Ms. Belfi, it's nice to see you.
Okay.
Just for the record, I just, now that I see you, I would like to just confirm that we're making a change to the notice. So in actual fact, we are going to change the reference to the lot depth for B00035, which would be the 1946 Lanester, from 42.2 to 44.2. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, for the record, we are changing the notice on that basis. Panel members, any questions for Ms. Belfi? No questions at all?
Chair,
All right.
Madam Chair, we do need a statutory declaration oath.
Oh,
That's
thank you
correct.
very much. I knew I was going to forget those. I knew I was going to forget those, and I should have started with that. So Ms. Belfi, I have a bit of a script that I kind of follow here for
Okay.
how we're going to do this. So you have your choice, either an oath or a solemn declaration. So what I need to know from you is, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process by the committee was posted? And I've got three things: at the property to which the application applies, for the prescribed, secondly, prescribed number of days before the hearing, and that it was clearly visible and legible during the entirety of the meeting. You can either say I swear or I affirm.
I swear.
All right, thank you very much. So thank you, Madam Coordinator, for reminding me. So we have that done. Panel members don't have any questions at this point. So I'm going to open it up to the public portion. Does anyone, is there anyone out there who would like to address the committee on this matter, either for or against? Can somebody please close down the window, because I can't see the, thank you. So I'm not seeing anybody come forward on this. All right, so based on that, committee, what say you on this application, those that are for? All right, so Ms. Belfi, I believe that the application is granted. So thank you very much for being part of our inaugural online meeting of the committees.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, I know. We're glad to be back. I got to tell you, we are
Yes.
glad to be back. So perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay.
So I think we're on to the next application at this point that I would like to hear, which is number 5. Bear with me for a moment. Number 5, 2 Parker Avenue. Again, same idea. I just want to know that for question purposes, we have the applicant or their agent available. So this, yes, all right. So I think we have with us this evening, Ms. Chandler. Is that, yes, okay, great. So we're not going to ask you for a presentation on this tonight, where I'm simply going to open it up to the panel to ask any questions at this particular point in time on the application for clarification. Oh, and before I forgot, 2 things, again, housekeeping. And Ms. Chandler, I'm going to need you to confirm this. So in the notice, we have, we need to make a change to read, instead of the way that it's written, which is to reduce the front yard setback of 2.4 meters. We're actually changing the wording to read now to permit a reduced front yard setback of, and it's 3.57 meters. Is that correct?
That's
All
correct.
right. For the record, we're amending the notification. Also, I will need to do the same with you, Ms. Chandler. I need you to either swear or I need an oath or a solemn declaration with regards to the sign posting. So let me read through this. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process by the committee was posted first at the property to which the application applies, secondly, for the prescribed number of days before the hearing, and thirdly, that that sign was clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time? Do you swear or affirm that to be true?
I swear that's the case.
All right, great. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's now go to questions. Anybody have anything? Yes, Mr. Hindle.
Yeah, I just had a quick one. Your package that you put together was really, really helpful. I appreciate it, especially the photo of looking over where is the proposed addition looking into the neighbor. So it's my sense that this is really just a technical variance in that really you're orienting the house to the side instead of to the narrow part of the lot. So we're just making some tweaks as associated to that.
So the issue is that the functional frontage of the house is on Parker Avenue, but the city's zoned frontage is on Sullivan. And on Sullivan, we do not have a window or a door or access to the road or anything like that. And that's where we'd like to put the addition. That yard has basically no relationship to neighbors. And so really it's just a corner of where the addition would go that requires the variance.
Okay, no, that's great.
All right.
Thank you.
Other questions from the panel? All right, so let me open up the public portion of the hearing then. I'm calling for anyone who may have an interest in the matter, who wants to speak either for or against. Do we have any speakers? I have nothing on my speakers list, but waiting to see if anybody wants to step in. All right, I don't believe we have anyone who wants to speak to this matter. So from this point on, I think panel members, we can make a decision who is in favor of this application. All right, so I think, Ms. Chandler, that we have a granting of your application at this point. So thank you very much for joining us this evening,
Thank you.
and good luck.
Thanks very much.
All right, thank you. Perfect. The next application that I would like to deal with is 992 Mountain View. Do we have Mr. Lee available? Should there be any questions? Yes, all right. I see Mr. Lee is available. Okay. So Mr. Lee, I think what we're going to do this evening, again, just as we did with the others, is that we're going to move forward with just some questions on your application. I do note that there's a couple of changes that we need to make to your notice. Again, a housekeeping kind of matters. So, and are you aware of that? That there's
Yeah, I think the adjournment, I mean, we had the adjournment back in January and then we made the changes and then I received the latest copy and it's been updated, I believe.
Yeah, you're right. So there, we did adjourn. We wanted to add in a new minor variance. My understanding, though, is that to the original minor variance, which was for the reduced rear yard setback, we do have to make a very, very minor change to the notice. So instead of it reading as it is today, that to reduce the rear yard setback to 1.2 meters, we're going to change that to 1.29 meters. And whereas the bylaw requires a rear yard setback of 6.88 rather than 6.9. Can you confirm for us that that's your understanding?
Yes, it is, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. So for the record, we've made that change. Mr. Lee, the other thing I need from you is either an oath or a solemn declaration. I will do the same for you as I have for the others. So please bear with me. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process by the committee was posted first at the property that's the subject of the application, secondly, for the prescribed number of days before the hearing, and that the sign was clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time? Do you swear and affirm that to be true?
I swear, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you very much. So on that basis, panel members, do you have any questions for Mr. Lee about this application? No? All right, so we're going to move right into the public portion of this application. So is there anyone out there who wants to either speak for or against this application?
Madam Chair, there is none.
All right, thank you very much, Madam Coordinator. On that basis, panel members, those in favor of the application? All right. Okay, so Mr. Lee, the application is granted by the committee. So thank you for joining us and good luck with your project.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for letting us be part of the original one. Thank you.
Yes, I know. It's very exciting. It's historical.
Thank you. Have a good night.
All right. All right. You too. Have a good evening.
I think if
All right,
anything,
so-
we're being more efficient now.
We're more efficient. We're motoring along. Exactly. Okay. So we're going to go back to the agenda. So those were essentially the items for which there were no speakers identified in advance. So now I'd like to hear from the agent for 85 Field Row. Do we have Mr. Segreto with us this evening? Mr. Segreto? You're on mute. Mr. Segreto, can you unmute and put your video on, please?
Hello?
Yes. Hello, Mr. Segreto. We haven't seen you in a little while, so good to see you this evening.
Good evening.
So I'm looking at your application, and again, I think there's housekeeping stuff with this one as well. So I am just going to go through this, and then you can confirm that it's your understanding as well. So on the application for minor variance, and I don't think I see the need for a change on the consent. So what I'm seeing is for 8, so, well, maybe it is. Hang on here for just a moment. Yes, actually it is a consent, Mr. Segreto. My apologies. So on the notice for consent, we have for, hang on here. Just want to make sure I've got the right one. Just bear with me for a moment.
Madam Chair, I believe it is
Right.
just on the A application on.
It's just on the minor variance application. We don't need to make a change to the other. I just want to make sure. I didn't even think to cross-check that. So, all right. So, Mr. Segreto, we have a change then for 85 Field Row Street, where we're going to say, rather than say that it's proposed 2-story, we're going to strike that and we're going to replace it with 1-story detached dwelling. And we are going to do exactly the opposite for 47 Field Row, which is to strike the 1-story and replace it with 2-story detached dwelling. Is that correct?
Yeah, for 87 is the 2-story, and that's correct. And 85 would be the 1-story.
Okay, all right, thank you. So, Mr. Segreto, also in terms of the signposting declaration, I'm going to need either an oath or a solemn declaration from you. Mr. Secretary Treasurer, just on a point of procedure, do I need to in fact do 2 based on the fact that we have a consent application and we have a minor variance application? Do you only require 1 declaration, or do you need 2 declarations?
Madam Chair, I believe that 1 oath will be sufficient in this case.
All right, thank you very much. In that case, Mr. Segreto, I'm going to read this out and then I need you to respond. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted first on the property to which the application applies, secondly, for the prescribed number of days before the hearing, and thirdly, that the sign was clearly visible and legible during the entirety of the time? Do you swear or affirm that to be true?
I swear. I swear.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to need just a very brief presentation from you, Mr. Segreto, on both the consent and the minor variance applications, and you can deal with them together.
Well, Madam Chair, committee members, basically what we have here is we have a lot on Field Row, which is an oversized lot, which has a frontage of 109 feet by 138 feet or so in depth. There's a single family dwelling on the property, and what my clients would like to do is demolish the bungalow on the property, and it's a father and son family that are be moving in. The bungalow will be for the father and his wife, and his son next door with his family. The variance that I'm requesting from you here this evening is only for lot width and lot width only, whereas the bylaw requires a minimum lot width of 19.5 meters. And what we're doing is we're providing a lot width of 16.62 for 85 Field Row, which is part 2, and on part 1 at 87 Field Row for the 2-story, a lot width of 16.63 meters. Those are the only 2 variants that we're requesting here this evening. I've provided a lot fabric on the street. There are over half a dozen houses that have been severed on the street and that have been very similar to the designs that we have in front of you here today. I believe that the designs that we have done with this project here meet the 4 tests and that they're very desirable and appropriate for this development.
All right, thank you, Mr. Segredo. Questions for the agent? Can I have the full windows back, please? Thank you. Questions, panel members at all on this one?
No.
All right. So I think
Sorry,
then
Madam
I'll
Chair.
open this up. Mr. White, did you
Sorry.
want to make comments?
Just a comment here. As you know, I've had some concerns with respect to the consistency of the zoning bylaw with the general purpose and intent of the official plan. I believe that in this area, in this community in particular, there's been some conflict between the two, the OP and the zoning. However, I think it's important in this situation to recognize the context, the planning context, and I'm referring specifically to the development across the street, the nature of development that exists across the street, which is it's a different zone and a number of semi-detached dwellings, which much smaller lots than are normally characteristic of this community, are existing on the south side of Field Road. Given that, I have no concerns with the application. I just want to make it clear that my agreement with the application would be based on the context here. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? All right, I'm going to open it up to the public portion of the hearing. I have a speaker on deck, Mr. Rassi. Is Mr. Rassi with us this evening?
Madam Chair, he is not.
He is not. All right. Is there anyone else then who's not on my speakers list that still would like to either speak for or against either the consent application or the minor variance application?
Madam Chair, there is no one.
All right, thank you very much. I want to give it a pause just in case there's somebody on mute or something that I don't know about. So, okay. On that basis then, for the consent and minor variance applications, panel members, what say you? In support?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right. And that's for both applications? We're in support?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. All right, so Mr. Segredo, your application, the 2 applications are granted. There are a number of conditions, however. I just want to make sure that we can go through those and that you understand that these need to be done. You've got cash in lieu. There's a requirement to ensure that the existing dwelling, the services are removed, or sorry, the dwelling is removed and the services are capped. You also have a need for independent services. You need to demonstrate that. You need to move the accessory structure, that it be demolished or relocated. You need a grading and drainage plan. And finally, you need a development agreement to cover the asphalt overlay requirement. You're okay with those?
Yeah, I'm fine with this.
All right, okay. And you know you need a demolition permit. You're aware of all that?
Yeah.
All right.
Yes, I am.
All right, okay. Anything more, Mr. Segredo, or are we good?
I'm good.
We're good? All right, thank you very much, Mr. Segredo. I know you're on again for an application, I believe. In fact, I think we're going to go to that one next, so don't go away. Next application is for 118 Lotta Avenue, and I believe, Mr. Segredo, that is you again. I don't see any requirement to undertake any housekeeping changes to the notice in any way, but I do need from you an oath or a solemn declaration. So again, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process by the committee did the following? Was it that it was erected on the property to which the application applies, that it was posted for the prescribed number of days before the hearing, and that it was at all times clearly visible and legible? Do you swear or affirm that to be true?
I swear, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you very much. So we're going to need just again another brief presentation from you, Mr. Segredo, on this application, if you will.
Again, Madam Chair, in this particular neighborhood, at 118 Lotta. There's a single family dwelling on the property, and the intent is to demolish the existing dwelling. It sits on a lot presently, which is 100 feet wide by 95 feet deep. What the owner would like to do is he would like to build 2 single family dwellings, which are about approximately 2,700 square feet. In order to do so, we are asking for variances for lot width and for lot area, which are very similar to variances that I've asked in front of this committee in the past over the last couple of years. So for part, for lot 120 Lotta, again, to allow a reduced lot width of 15.24 meters, whereas the bylaw requires 19.5. And for 118 Lotta, again, to permit a reduced lot width of 15.24 meters and a lot area of 442 square meters, where the bylaw requires a minimum of 600 square meters. These are pretty typical in this area. I believe I have lot fabric that I'm showing 50-foot lots that have been severed in the past in the neighborhood. On this particular block, there are no 50-foot lots, but if you look at my lot fabric map, you can clearly see that there are 50-foot lots in the area. Other than that, again, it's one of the typical ones that we do in the area. You can see the subject property in red, and then the 50-foot lots, I believe, are the ones that are in blue in the area on Tower, on Rita, et cetera, in that particular neighborhood. So it's not out of character. I believe the variances are minor, and I do believe that it is desirable in this neighborhood.
All right, thank you. Questions from the committee? And can I have the, thank you, appreciate that. Questions, anyone? Comments?
Madam Chair, I just want to reflect on, we have received a letter of objection, I believe, from the community, a member of the community, Terry Hutchins.
Yes, Mr. Hutchins is in fact on my speakers list, so we may hear from him.
Okay.
But if you want to, if you want to outline some of the points that are of interest, go. Please
Perhaps
proceed.
I'll reserve my comments to after we've heard from the community group.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
I'll
Any other? I'm sorry. Oh. Okay. All right. Anyone else? No one else from the committee to ask any questions on this? All right. I am going to open it up then to the public at this point. Do we have Mr. Hutchins on? Yes, Mr. Hutchins.
I don't know if you can hear me.
We can hear you. You can put your video on if you'd like.
No, that's okay.
All right.
Thanks.
So the floor is yours. Any questions that you would have, please just put them through me. But if you have comments, you're welcome to provide those as well.
No, I understand, Mr. Segreto, if that's your name, sir, that the proposed minor variances within standard of our community. You have my letter that, you know, outlines my history of experience with committees of adjustment and planning committees. And I've listed my concerns. I'm not sure that they're all to be addressed by the committee of adjustment, but I would like the builder to be aware of those. And certainly, again, my concern around drainage is huge. You know, it's just a problem, and so I've detailed that in my letter. I don't know if I can add anything to that. I think it's quite clear. And so either community adjustment or the letter that I've written, I'd like to have addressed by planning committee, so that the issues that I raised could be considered for this this site that's going to be redeveloped.
All right. So questions for Mr. Hutchins from the group? Yes, Ms. Willis, you're on mute.
Yes, having read your letter, Mr. Hutchins, I'm just curious about how the drainage works and why the intensification across the street is going to impact your side of the street. I'm just, I'm assuming that the ditches were filled in with the pipe that you're referring to. And so I'm trying to understand how the drainage on Mr. Segretto's side will impact your side, when I would have assumed it was a separate drainage, not drainage area, but separate pipe that's draining the area.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
There is no pipe for drainage. We live in an old area that has no city drainage other than the big collector on Cordova. The water on our streets in this old neighborhood has been contained by ditches in the front of the houses. And what's happened is that the builders, and if you look in our neighborhood and look even on my street, builders are no longer maintaining those ditches for retaining water. And with the berm from Algonquin College and the loss of green space by these two houses that'll take up a lot more space, I think that's only going to increase the amount of water in that lot beside 120 Lotta. The other thing is the builders putting their drainage into that sewer pipe. It's not a drainage water pipe, it's a sewer pipe. And my letter explains quite clearly that there's flooding that takes place when the sewer pipe's not maintained. And even if it is maintained, I've had flooding in my letter. If you look at it, it talks about the fact that 2 manhole covers on my street were full to within a foot of the top with water. And that's not based on sewer water. That's based on water being sent from weeping tile and from sump pumps that are dumping directly into this, I think it's an 8-inch pipe or 10-inch pipe at the biggest. So it's not a water pipe, it's sewer only. And therefore, when the pipe is not maintained, and I've had flooding 2 or 3 times since I've lived here. And that's a serious concern I have. And the water flows from the 118 Lotta across into my side, beside my house, into extended care to the north. And so I end up with a lot of water, and I have to dig a ditch each spring and even the winter sometimes to drain that water away from my property.
I'm wondering if we can then get staff to clarify how these connections are being made into a sanitary sewer. I don't quite follow what's happening.
All right, so Ms. Ezio, we're going to need to hear from you. So you can unmute and please bring up your video.
Yes, so hi, we do have comments from infrastructure that a full and complete review of grading and servicing will be done during the building permit process. I can't speak to the drainage systems, but I do know that with the redevelopment, they would be upgraded to fully modern separated systems. But that is something that we would review at building permit stage.
All right.
Madam Chair, if I could comment, I do have some familiarity with the history in this area. And I think, as I've reiterated to the committee on previous occasions and similar applications in this area, the history of this community has been, there have been situations similar to what Mr. Hutchins is describing throughout the community. And the former municipality, as I reiterated previously, did not support minor variances to the extent that apparently have been recently supported in the neighborhood. And one of the concerns that was the former municipality's rationale for not supporting the extent of variances in frontage and increased intensification in this area was that there were these isolated drainage problems throughout the community. So just as a matter of my historical knowledge of the area, I think Mr. Hutchins has hit the mark on the situation in this location. I would have a question about the ownership situation of that lot that is adjacent to the proposed severance. There's a small lot there. I believe it's probably a 25-foot frontage. Is that in fact owned by the municipality?
I can speak to that.
Actually, Mr. Hutchins, I think I'd like to direct that question to staff. So Ms. Ezio, can you answer that for us?
I had a
please?
hard time hearing her when she spoke. I barely heard what she said before.
All right, so we'll address that. And I agree. So Ms. Ezio, can you come back to us, please?
Yes. So the question is about the ownership. Is it the laneway in the back that you're referring to?
Is it a laneway, Mr. White?
No, it's the lot. I think, let me look at the location plan. It's 124. Immediately to the, would be the west of the proposed development, adjacent to the Algonquin College lands. There's a vacant parcel there beside the existing house. And I'm just asking the ownership of that lot.
I believe it's owned by Algonquin College, but I will verify that.
All right. Just out of curiosity, Mr. Hodgins or Ms. Ramirez, are you familiar with that parcel at all? Is there something, or can somebody look it up then on the city system in any way to confirm ownership?
Through you, Madam Chair, during the pre-consultation, the owner identified that it was owned by Algonquin College and that they weren't interested in selling it to the adjacent owner.
All right, thank you very much for that. Okay. Any other questions, Mr. White?
No, Madam Chair. I'll reserve my comments to later. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hutchins. I think that's the questions that we have for you. So I'm going to go to any other speaker that may want to speak either for or against this application. Madam Coordinator, do we have anybody on deck?
Madam Chair, we have no one.
All right, thank you very much. In that case, I think, Mr. White, did you want to make your comments now?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you're aware, far back as originally May 16th, I forwarded a memo to an email to the Secretary Treasurer and members of this committee at the time, outlining my concerns with respect to severances to the extent of, minor variances to the extent that we are looking at today in this area. And that I outlined the history of the planning history of the community. It's my view that the current zoning bylaw has not been revisited since the adoption of the official plan provisions with respect to intensification. The zoning bylaw that was in existence goes, and the one that continues, the provisions that continue to today go back as far as 1962. Did provide for some limited infill based on lot consolidations and severances. However, not to the extent that is being supported by the city at this point in time, and some of the applications that have been approved by the committee previously. In my opinion, I think the committee's functioning as a zoning amendment process, and quite frankly, we've been dealing with numerous applications of this nature, and which are changing the character of the neighborhood quite significantly. I'm still of the view that that the minor variants that are being sought here are not consistent with the general purpose and intent of the bylaw provisions that were clearly intended to put greater limits on the pace of development, of redevelopment of the character of this neighborhood. my understanding has been no action on the part of the city to bring the lot frontage and lot area provisions in line with the increased OP emphasis on intensification. And I think it's inappropriate that the Committee of Adjustment should be dealing with applications of this nature, approving applications of its nature when they are, in my view, not consistent with the general purpose intent of the zoning bylaw. So I'm going to be dissenting on this application.
All right, thank you, Mr. White. Any other comments? All right, so I'd like to go back to you though, Mr. White, then on that, because I think you're quite right. We have raised this matter before. This is not news to us as a panel. Certainly the previous panels in place have been faced with the same questions. And so what I'm going to propose, Mr. White, is that we raise this to the Committee of the Whole, and that we talk about strategies for dealing perhaps with similar circumstances. I'm not sure what the result of that would be, but at least I think it's worthy of a discussion at this point at the Committee of the Whole level. Anyone want to comment on that? No? All right. Mr. Secretary Treasurer, then in that case, can I ask you to take note that that's an issue that the committee should raise for discussion? We may want to invite whomever at the city. I'm thinking the public works side. Mr. White, I may even be looking for you for some guidance on that. But I'm going to suggest that we raise the discussion once again at the Committee of the Whole level. Any issues, Mr. Secretary Treasurer?
We will organize that, Madam Chair. I have made a note of that. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So, okay. Any other comments on this application, one way or the other? We've closed the public portion of both the consent and the minor variance at this point. All right, I'm seeing no other hands up for discussion. Mr. Sagredo, there are a number of comments that have come in on your applications. I'm looking at reference from Forestry Service. Have you had a chance to familiarize yourself with all of the notes or correspondence on your file in this regard?
Yeah, I looked at the correspondence and I realized what forestry is saying. There's the one tree there that off to the west there, it's not going to get touched at all. There are a couple of trees on the property that may be affected, but the tree which is in front of the property, the maple tree, will not be affected at all.
All right, okay, so you know though that you're still subject to the tree preservation bylaw and requirements in that regards? Okay. I have a question for you, Ms. Ezio, if you could come back, please. I note that the airport, the Ottawa International Airport, has added a comment with regards to providing a noise warning registered and noise study. Did you want to speak to that? I didn't see that anywhere in your comments. Was there anything in particular we need to do in this case? Do you know what that was referring to specifically?
I did not see that.
I'm sorry, we're losing you again.
Sorry, is the sound a little bit better? I did not see that comment from the airport authority.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I know this is a comment that we've gotten before on other applications in this neighborhood. I think in the past we've gone with, because it's a minor variance in this case and not consent, I think we've just waived it.
All right. I just wanted to understand if there was anything more to that we needed to know. And I agree with you. We have waived these things in the past. It's just, obviously was raised by the airport authority. So anyway, on that basis then, we've got both sorry, no, it's not both a consent. It's just the minor variance. So committee, what say you on this application? Are you in favor? All in favor?
Dissent.
Dissent from Mr. Okay. So Mr. Sagredo, I think on the basis of the majority of the committee, so myself, Ms. Willis and Mr. Hindle, your application is granted. We are noting the dissent by Mr. White at this time. So otherwise, I think we're done on the 118 Lotta. All right. Moving on to the next application, and Mr. Segredo, don't go away. You're going to be on last again. So I'd like to call then application number 6, which is 934 940 Hare Avenue, please. Do we have Mr. Yelkatsi? Madam Coordinator, do we have Mr.? Yes. Okay, Mr. Yelkatsi, can you please also put your video on?
Where's my video now? I've been at this before. Unmuted. Start video. Okay.
Ah, there you are. Oh, I love your background.
Thank you.
All right. Before we go too far, however, let's see. We do have a couple of housekeeping matters for you as well. My understanding is a correction to the notice. Let me read this out to you and you can tell me if it is correct. The land to be severed shown as part 2 on a draft plan filed with the application will have a frontage of 4.27 meters on Hare Avenue to a depth of, and we're striking out 41.24 and replacing it with 41.25. Incredibly minor, but can you please tell us if you confirm that?
I can confirm that. I did confirm that by email as well.
All right, thank you. Also, signposting on the property. So I need either an oath or a solemn declaration from you. So I'll read this out. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process by the committee was posted first on the property to which the application applies? Secondly, for the prescribed number of days before the hearing, and thirdly, that that sign was clearly visible and legible during the entirety of the time posting. So do you swear or affirm that to be true?
I swear that to be true.
All right, thank you, Mr. Yelkatsi. I'm going to turn it over to you because I think we would like a brief presentation from you on this application.
Okay. I'm just wait. Okay, we'll see the screen. I have 2 screens up. It's the first time I've actually worked with Zoom with 2 screens, so it's a little bit interesting as well. But it lets me see you folks as well. It's a fairly straightforward application. It's essentially a lot line readjustment. The client owns both properties, wishes to move, lives in the property on the south side, and wishes to enlarge his property slightly because he does have a bay window on the north side of their property. And so he'd like to move the lot line. And by doing that, he reduces the lot size to the north of his property, or the second property that we're talking about. And he's conveying part of that land to his property or his lot. Both of the properties still fully comply with the zoning bylaws. There's a shed that will have to be removed. I've reviewed all of the comments that have been made, and the only one where it didn't show up in the comments from the planner, but Hydro suggested that there's a hydro line there. Unfortunately, is our surveyor who put a hydro line on that. It's actually only bell and cable. The hydro line doesn't cross. It's not a condition under the city's report, so we're quite comfortable with it.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the panel? And can I have the full screen back, please? Thank you. All right, questions from the panel. Mr. Hindle.
Yeah, so I just had a question. In this case, I know it's a little bit strange. So we've got effectively a 94-foot existing lot that we're adding 4.27 feet to. Meters or feet? No. Yes, we're adding fairly significant frontage to this lot. Is there an intention in future of then further severing this newly consolidated enlarged lot?
No, this is a very new and modern home that's on this property. And there would be significant minor variances required to subdivide that into another lot, but no, there's absolutely no intent. The house on the north side is actually a little bit older and is likely one that would be demolished at some point if and when the current owner chooses to sell it. He's currently renting it. And that's one of the reasons why he is doing this, because he wants to make sure any new construction will be far enough away from his own property.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, so Mr. Yalakotsi, can you tell me what the frontage requirement is for this zone? Do you know offhand?
I didn't actually
All
check
right.
that at this point in time, but
So I can ask Ms. Ramirez if
Yeah.
you could, please.
Madam Chair, through you, it's 18 meters.
It's 18 meters, okay. And so you're right. So I kind of went through the same calculations that Mr. Hindle did too at some point, trying to figure out whether or not we are, going to be looking at yet another consent application going forward. But I think you're right on that basis. Then it would be an awful reduction in the lot frontage from 18 to go to, and I think it would wind up being something like 12.5 or something. So, okay. All right. Any other questions for Mr. Yalkotsi on this? No? All right. I'm going to open this up to the public portion. Is there anyone? I don't believe I have anybody as a speaker to this. Hang on, let me just make sure. No, I don't. Does anybody out there, any member of the public, want to speak either for or against this application?
Madam Chair, there is no one.
There is no one. All right. Okay. So on that basis, then, Mr. Yalkotsi, you've got 3 conditions.
yes,
The removal of the or relocation of that shed. You also have an existing gravel driveway to be removed and area revegetated. Can you explain that one to us either? Well, actually, Mr. Yalkotsi, you go ahead and explain that one.
yeah. What's there is there's a circular drive to the existing house on the north, and so the southerly portion of the circular drive needs to be removed.
All right, thank you. Okay, Ms. Ramirez, no issues other than that with regards to that driveway?
No, Madam.
Okay, and then the last condition seems to be number 3, which has to do with lot line adjustment, which I guess is just the normal sort of legal text that we have accompanying that kind of consent. Is that correct? Can you confirm that, please?
Yes.
All right, thank you so much. Anything else from the panel on this application, one way or the other? Okay, those in support, please.
Madam Chair, if I could, sorry, before the vote, I apologize. It's Warner Brenning, Deputy Secretary Treasurer. I'm just going back to the issue of the overhead wire. If it's not a hydro wire, if it's Bell or not sure what the other easement would be. Yeah, is there an easement required because of that strip gets conveyed to 940? Presumably 934 will require an easement over that strip.
All right, so Ms. Ramirez, we're going to want to hear from you on that. Should we, because originally the panel was going to actually add a condition number 4 to ensure the clearing of the hydro requirement for the overhead services, but I guess, do we need to do anything with regards to an easement? Ms. Ramirez.
Can I comment on that just quickly?
Actually, no, I'd like to hear from Ms. Ramirez, please. Thank you. Ms. Ramirez.
Madam Chair, I apologize, but I'm not familiar with that if there would be an easement requirement with respect to that utility.
All right. So, Mr. Yalkotsi, is there already an easement for those services?
There's not an easement, and if there are any wires that need to be relocated, and we could put that in the condition. Currently, my understanding from the homeowner is that those two lines are unused. The services are that property is actually serviced through another location that does not cross the existing property line. So in either case, if for some reason there is a line there, it will be removed. There's no need for an easement at all.
All right, so Mr. Yelkatsi, you said it was Bell, and what was the other utility you mentioned? Sorry.
Bell and cable, it would have been.
Like Rogers? We're talking, I don't know.
Yeah, something. Well, it
Right.
came when I got the response from the letter from Hydro. I queried the homeowner immediately. He told me immediately that it was an unused Bell and telephone wires. That's it.
All right, so panel members, I'm going to propose that we offer some sort of generic kind of condition to this that should be easily cleared, Mr. Yelkatsi.
Yes.
Do I have agreement with the committee on that?
Yes.
All right, so how would that read? That would be that the condition would read, and maybe Ms. Ramirez, you might want to help me out here, but I'm thinking that the owner provide to the satisfaction of the general manager of planning, infrastructure and economic development department or his or her designate to be confirmed in writing that Bell Hydro, or sorry, that there's no requirement for an easement for any utility, and I'm not sure how they would do that. So the clearing of that condition would be a letter from Bell saying that they don't require an easement. Is that sufficient? Can we simply leave it at that?
Yes.
Ms. Ramirez. Ms. Ramirez, I'd like her answer. Yes, thank you.
Typically, we aren't involved with clearing easements for the utility companies. Typically, that the Committee of Adjustment handles the correspondence between the utility and the application.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. White.
I'm just wondering if we could just require a notification from the utilities, cable, Bell, and possibly Hydro. Perhaps we don't need the Hydro, but just a confirmation that the applicant can provide from those utilities that they have no further requirements with respect to easement.
All right, so that would mean to clear those conditions, the applicant would have to get those confirmation letters from each one of those three utilities, right? All right, Ms. Willis?
If we believe
it. I was just gonna suggest what Mr. White was saying, that the owner is saying that it's not a hydro line, but we were led to believe it was. So if it's not a hydro line, we can get a clearance from them too. So I think it's got to include them as one of the clearing agencies.
All right, so back to the wording on this condition then. Again, the owner provide evidence to the satisfaction of the general manager of planning, infrastructure and economic development department and or his or her designate to be confirmed in writing from each of the three following that there is no easement requirement, confirmed from the following three utility companies: Bell Canada, Hydro, Ottawa, and Cable. I don't know what company, I guess at this point, that there's no cable requirement for easement. Is that, would that work?
Madam Chair, can I request that the condition be sent, that it be sent to the Committee of Adjustment for that clearance, just because typically our department's not involved with clearing easements or letter of confirmations from the utilities.
Yes, that's fine. That's fine. And I understand what you're saying. So no issue there at all. Okay. On that basis, we are amending the conditions to include, and feel free to improve on the wording in any way anybody wants to at this point. So, okay. All right. So on that basis, people, we are doing this. So panel, I don't even recall if we had a vote on this at this point.
No.
So are we in favor? Yes. All right. So Mr. Yelkatsi, the application is granted. Somebody please remind me, I did open and close a public hearing. Did I not on this?
Yes.
Yes. All right. Thank you. I'm losing it. I'm beginning to lose it. It's getting later. Okay. So thank you, Mr. Kotze. Finally, last application on 19 Rideau Glen Drive. All right, so we have as an agent, again, Mr. Segreto. Hello, thank you for hanging in there with us. We're going to require a presentation from you, Mr. Segreto. If you could, I'm going to give you the floor. Thank you.
What we've done on this application here, Madam Chair, is that Rideau Glen is there's an existing bungalow which backs onto the Rideau River. My client would like to add an addition to the front portion of the property. And in the back, they want to retain the existing deck, but rebuild it in such a way that they still have the deck at the back. So in order to do this, there's three variants that come into play. Variance A is obviously due to the fact that we're increasing the footprint slightly of the property, that we're asking for a variance to increase the percentage. The allowable percentage is 50% of the lot area, and what we're asking is to increase it by 3% to 18%, or 264 square meters. Whereas the bylaw only allows 15%, which relates to 205 square meters. The second variance, B, is to permit a structure, building structure, unenclosed features such as deck, and I've enclosed photographs of the deck in the back, so on and so forth. And this variance is to be reduced from the 30-meter setback from the normal high water table. We're asking for the variance to be 16.99 meters from the normal high water table to the deck. Variance C, again, it needs 30 meters from the high water table, and this would be the building structure, the building itself. I'm asking for a variance to reduce it from the 30 meters to 19.43 meters from the normal high water table. Those are the three variances. We had studies done on this that were sent out and that have been applied and put in the package to you. I know RBC also has commented on it, and they don't have any concerns with these three variances. We feel that they're minor in nature. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Segreto, before we go any further, I have forgotten to get an oath or solemn declaration from you. So again, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was first posted on the property to which the application applies? Secondly, that it was posted for the prescribed number of days before the hearing, and thirdly, that the sign was clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time. Do you swear or affirm that to be true?
I swear, I swear.
All right, thank you very much. I don't have any other housekeeping items either with regards to the notice or anything like that. So on that basis, questions from the committee at this point? Yes, Ms. Willis.
I have two questions. First of all, Mr. Segreto, the increase in coverage as a result of the addition at the front of the house, is that correct?
That's correct.
And I noticed in the staff report that it talks about the fact that the Conservation Authority, or rather the city staff is supporting this is because the applicant has agreed to connect to the municipal sanitary sewer system rather than using a septic tank. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, yeah. We're going to hook up to the city sewers, yes.
So are you aware of anything that requires the applicant, once this variance is granted on the strength of not having a septic system, what requires the applicant to hook into the municipal sanitary sewer system?
What requires? We'll have our engineers look at it. They'll design the sanitary and storm accordingly. There'll be a grading plan which will be provided with this as well, I believe, at the time of building permit. But there are services along this street And I'm not sure if other houses are hooked into it or not, but the services are there. It only makes sense to take advantage of that and get rid of the septic system. That septic system may even be outdated, maybe 15, 20 years old. I don't know. But the intent is to hook up into the city services. The well, I believe there's a well as well, but the well, I believe, will be retained.
Okay, I think I might come back to that to talk to staff about that. I also wanted to, I guess, ask staff about the comments that came in. The Conservation Authority letter dated March the 10th has said that they do not have an objection to this, and yet the consolidation of comments indicates the Conservation Authority comment saying additional information needs to be provided for review and all variances must be correctly identified, slope stability assessment needed. So not sure of the order of events, but that is a different comment from the original one that's included in our package. I'm just wondering which prevails.
All right, so Ms.
If-
Willis,
if
I was going to have the same questions for the Conservation Authority. So Mr. Lalonde, thank you for joining us this evening. Mr. Lalonde, we're going to ask you to explain, please, some of the discrepancies between the comments that you made earlier and the comments that we have now. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, if I may, through the chair, the comments that were provided with regards to no objections are the ones that are current. We are not objecting to the application. The concerns, I believe, are going back to the first time. I think it was February 5th when we had the first meeting. Those were likely when those comments came out that we were still looking for information. That has since been provided to the Conservation Authority. Further to that, we have during the current state we're in, we've issued the permit for the application, contingent upon this variance going through, as they were able to satisfy all of the Conservation Authority's concerns from the slope stability aspect, as well as we're comfortable with the design for the deck on this property. So there are no objections. The comments of concerns, I believe, predate my recent letter from March 10th.
All right, thank you. Any
Okay,
follow-up
thank you.
questions? Ms.
No.
No, all right. Anyone else with some questions? Yes, Mr. Handel.
Maybe you can confirm, Monsieur Lalonde or staff. I understand that there was a heritage report, a CHIS, that was circulated to Parks Canada as well as to staff. I just want to confirm that that's gone through. We haven't gotten any comments back on that.
All right, let's go to, is it Mr. Hodgins on this application? No, Ms. Ramirez. Ms. Ramirez, can you elaborate on that for us? I had the same question as well in terms of what happened to that Heritage Conservation report.
Through you, Madam Chair, the Heritage Department did approve it. It was circulated to Parks Canada, noting when the Committee of Adjustment date was, and that if they had any comments to provide them directly to the committee.
All right, I didn't see any of those comments. Anybody? Ms. Coordinator, can somebody confirm from staff whether or not we're in receipt of comments from Parks Canada in that regard?
We have not received any comments from Parks Canada.
All right, thank you. That's unfortunate, actually. I'm not sure, Mr. Handel, did you want to, is there anything else that you would like to Laura there?
I think I just had the same question as Ms. Willis talking about the abandonment of the septic. I wonder, I know it does happen that we tie variances to plans at given times. I wonder if we may be able to tie it to the site plan that shows the proposed addition. And it does also have the comments about the location of the well and the septic, and it notes that the septic is to be abandoned.
Oh, good point.
I wonder if we tie it to that plan, then it does require the abandonment of the septic.
All right, Mr. Segredo, did you want to respond to that?
If you look at the plan that he was just holding there, I just noticed that right very close to where you see variance A marked on my plan, it says location of existing well to be capped, new well to be provided. So we don't know the location of that new well yet. It says right there on the plan. And then you can clearly see where the new services are supposed to be coming in through the front porch. So if you want to tie us into these plans, these are fine by me. But I just can't tell you exactly where the new well is going to be located.
Well, I think it's a good idea to actually tie it to plans. So unless anybody has any objections, that's what we're going to do.
Can I just, I was just going to strengthen a little bit, I just want to make sure that if somebody did determine that they wanted to make that minor revision and maybe apply for a septic permit, that would not be permitted. So we could perhaps even mention it in tying to the plan, including the abandonment of or including the connection to the municipal sewage system. Because there's likely to be very minor changes to the site plan in any case. And somebody might think that that's a very minor one, just taking out the, not that I'm suspicious, Mr. Segreto, I just want to make sure that because it's that the whole decision is being based on the fact that the connection is going to be made, that we just make sure that happens.
My understanding is that what the owner wants to do. They want to hook up into the system, and I'm fine with that.
Okay.
All right, so I don't know though, Ms. Willis, somebody can correct me, but we can tie it to the plans, but I don't know that we can go any further with regards to requiring that they also connect to municipal services in this regard.
But it says that it's the abandonment of the septic system. So my point is that if a tree is moved or something else that's shown on the plan, that it's a minor change, it would be permitted, but that is a major deal breaker, basically, is that one notation. So we should make sure that that notation is not removed from the plan.
All right, as long as that's, yeah, I think I don't have any issues with that. I think that that's quite doable. Okay. But other than that, I'm not sure what we could possibly.
That's good.
All right, thank you. Any other comments or questions for the applicant on this? All right, Mr. Lalonde, did you want to speak?
Yeah, just to maybe add some information from the behalf of the Ottawa Septic System Office. If they were to replace the system, the new system that would replace it would require a permit, and we would typically treat the new septic system as a structure, which would then have to apply a variance to. So there would have to be another opportunity for the committee to comment on that if they were seeking it. If they were to try and utilize the existing system with the addition proposed, they'd have to go through Part 1011 permit as well. There's different tools before they could actually get approval for the septic system. So there's a lot of additional tools if they wanted to try to put one in. But that's all predicated on this application is not seeking that direction, hasn't been requiring it. So there would be other kicks at the can if the committee was concerned about a septic system being implemented. They'd have to be implemented through another variance as well as permitting, which in this situation, given its proximity to the river, would trigger concerns from the Conservation Authority. And I think we would end up back here if they wanted to do that.
All right, Ms. Willis.
Just for clarification, I'm not sure I understand, Mr. Lalonde, what Mr. Lalonde's saying about a septic system being a structure, because I've never seen a variance on a septic system before. So I'm not sure that it would come back to the committee.
We've requested the variances applied to septic systems. Typically, I've been bringing them forward as part of panel 3. It is something that we have done on numerous properties in Ottawa.
All right. So how do people know that, sorry,
Is
go
it
ahead.
part of the
Mr.
cover?
That would have to be in the zoning. It would have to be a provision of the zoning bylaw in order to make an application.
And we typically comment and flag on it as part of the review process and try and get that tied up before it's the case, or look at options where they move the septic system back. So that's part of our review and pre-consultation to try and minimize and avoid that where possible.
So is it a septic system is not considered a structure within the zoning bylaw to the extent that it's part of the coverage calculation? So how?
Through you, Madam Chair, the setback from watercourses section 69 refers to buildings or structures. So that's where it kicks in. So that's where that's where.
All right. So what you're saying is there actually is a provision in the zoning bylaw that's triggered when they go in for their application to the Conservation Authority, they flag it and it comes forward as a minor variance. Is that it?
If it's a new system.
If it's a new system. So, all right, as opposed to what?
An existing system we would recognize and kind of grandfather it as existing.
All right, okay. Any further questions on this? All right, I going once, going twice. All right, I have no speakers on deck for this, but I am going to open it up to the public. Is there anyone who would like to speak either for or against this application? Not seeing any speakers. Madam Coordinator, could you please?
There is no one.
All right, thank you very much. So on that, in that regard, then, we are at decision point committee. Those in favor of the application? All right, so Mr. Segredo, the application is granted. So, and there's no conditions. So thank you. And thank you, Mr. Lalonde, also. Just before everyone goes, Ms. Willis.
We're tying it to the plan. We're tying the plan.
Yes. But the minor variance is granted on the basis of it being tied to the plan. Thank you for that reminder. Okay,
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Segredo. That is the end of the agenda for this evening. So thank you, everyone. And I am looking for a motion to adjourn. Motion moved by Ms. Willis and seconded by Mr. Hindle. Thank you very much. Thank you to staff. Everything went seamless.
Yeah, good job.
Good job, staff, for sure. Thank you, staff, planning staff as well. It's good to be back and dealing with you as well. So thanks for joining us this evening. Anything else? Last parting words.
First of many.
The first of many, I think. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, and have yourselves a great evening. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.